Morning, everyone. So today we're going to make two fantastic products with these beautiful organic Sicilian blood oranges. They're really special to us on the estate. January is a time for health, for reinvigorating, for starting a new year. And we have been preserving, juicing, curding all over the place. And today we're going to do that with you. So we're going to make two products. We're going to make a blood orange curd and a blood orange marmalade. Some we made earlier at the front here. We're going to start off with the marmalade. Marmalade is super simple. It's a fantastic product because it uses the whole of the orange. You don't waste anything. You use all the natural ingredients. And you get this fantastic preserved product at the end that's great on sourdough crumpets in the garden cafe or on Appleway sourdough at home. So, to start the marmalade, first up, we're going to cut all the oranges in half. Look at the inside of that absolutely stunning, detailed design. We're going to start by cutting them all in half. While we're doing this, we'll talk a little bit about the fruit. So in January, we start to get the first of the European blood oranges, which are organically grown in Sicily. We're very lucky here that we have relationships with amazing growers, none more so than our friends at Babylon Storing in South Africa, who grow us a wide variety of fruit. And we get a second flush of blood oranges towards the end of our summer, the beginning of their winter. August time, end of August, beginning of September, we begin to see another flush of South African blood oranges from our friends down there. Once you've cut all your oranges in half, so we've got exactly a kilo of oranges here. Okay, we've cut a kilo of oranges in half, and we're going to extract all the juice. We'll just squeeze it out like that, remembering to put to one side the rest of the orange, because we're going to use all of that in a minute. So we'll squeeze all the juice out through our sieve into a pan. We have, along with the kilo of blood oranges, a kilo of jamming sugar. So jamming sugar is a specialist sugar which has a little addition of pectin and citric acid. So citric acid is just the acid you find in any citrus fruit. And pectin is a naturally occurring setting agent that you find in the skin and cells of various fruit. And it's been extracted and it's mixed in with the sugar. You buy jamming sugar in any supermarket or local store. And the pectin will help the marmalade to set. The only other ingredients we're going to add completely naturally are a little rosemary from the gardens just outside here, and a little cinnamon. Now, these are just little flavorings that you can add to your marmalade. You don't need to add anything. The natural flavour of the blood orange can sing through, or you can go, some people add a little whiskey sometimes, or fennel seeds, or clove, or juniper. It's really up to you what kind of flavourings you want to add in. Right, we're getting towards the end of this, so we get all our juice out. One more. I hope you're keeping up at home there. Probably going to move quite quickly. We've got an hour set for this, so we're going to get the marmalade on as quickly as we possibly can, because it takes a little while to cook. So I hope all of you cooking along at home that got your kits online are keeping up. Right, once we've got all the juice, we're going to let that strain through the sieve, and then we're going to prepare our oranges. So we don't want to waste any of the inside. We've got all the juice out, but we're going to put that down there. We're going to take all the pith and the centre that's left, and we're going to extract it and put it into a muslin bag so that we can then cook this in the marmalade. And what this is going to have in it is a lot of the natural pectins of the orange. We're keeping all of those, and we're using those to help set our marmalade. So just cut your halves into quarters. And then we're just going to, what we call cheek the orange. So we're going to go right along the skin with a nice sharp knife, taking the inside out. and place it into our muslin. Then keeping the rest of the skin and put it into one side. So we'll do that for all our oranges. Remember, very carefully, just flatten out the quarter. Take your knife, very carefully, just taking the white off and the inside and putting it into your muslin bag. These oranges have such a fantastic colour. It's really strange. The ones we got first, the very first ones of the season, hadn't quite developed fully, so there was much less red in the orange. And as they get riper throughout the season, they get redder and redder, and you see these beautiful colours coming through. You can obviously make marmalade with any orange, really, the traditional Seville orange, which has a much sort of more astringent, bitter taste. So you would add a little more sugar if you're making a marmalade those. You can use a normal juicing orange or a normal eating orange. With the marmalade, it's all about getting enough pectin and making sure you keep all the insides and using a little jamming sugar so that when you come to set the marmalade, the pectin really develops and sets. The pectin can take up to between 24 and 48 hours to set. So don't imagine, we'll do a little tester later on when we've finished, but don't imagine that the marmalade will be set straight away. It takes a little bit of time overnight to develop. So working your way through all your oranges.
So Alan, these oranges come from Sicily, that's correct?
That is correct, Arthur, yes. They're foothills of Mount Etna. They're organically grown, and we get them shipped in, cargo shipped in, and we buy pallets at a time. As you can see, if you live locally and you've been on site, there are blood oranges everywhere at the moment. We've got them preserved in stock syrup and cinnamon. We've got them in marmalade. We also make this really lovely blood orange pickle, a bit like a lime pickle that you'd serve with your curry, but with the skins of the blood oranges after we've juiced them for our bottles of juice and things like that.
They've got an exquisite colour to them.
Yeah.
Would you say that they're very sharp or are they well balanced?
These oranges for me are really well balanced. They do have a lovely sharpness to them. I don't like things that are particularly overly sweet. The juice is absolutely delicious. And I was having a conversation with someone yesterday who said their children had become addicted to the blood orange juice this year. So they have a really lovely flavour to them.
So you've got a lemon in your bowl there, but will people at home be needing to perhaps sharpen up their marmalades, or is that just an optional extra?
It's an optional extra. I like to have a bit of lemon. Obviously, the jamming sugar's got a little citric acid in it, but I always like to have a little option of if we like to add a little acidity or something like that at the end. So we'll try the marmalade before we jam it up, and if we want to put a little bit of lemon juice in there, we can do.
And what are you going to be using your marmalade for? Have you got some ideas for recipes that you're going to be using it for?
Yeah, we've got lots of ideas for recipes. It's a fantastic time of year to get preserving and then have something to use throughout the rest of the year. So yeah, we'll be probably a blood orange marmalade, steam pudding, things like that. I love it just on a really richly buttered sourdough crumpet in the morning. It's such a wonderful, naturally sweet, citrusy flavour that it's a real special product.
And a lot of different families seem to have very secret, different recipes for their own marmalades. Is this something that your family share?
It's funny, actually. My mum has always made marmalade and jams, and we actually make them in different ways. I will cook mine direct, but she'll soak her pith in her muslin bag overnight. So I think even within families, you can have different techniques and different ways of cooking. She'll always tell me mine's best because she thinks I'm a professional, but actually I got all my passion for food from her. So I think hers is great.
Well, it's certainly an extraordinary kitchen you're in today. That bright orange of the oranges in front of you with the bright orange of that paradise, bird of paradise behind you. Do you cook in the winter garden often?
No, I think this is possibly the first time I've ever cooked in here, but we're incredibly lucky here to have such fantastic, beautiful spaces, and this is just one of them. A real beautiful environment to spend time in, but also to cook in today. We've set up a little special station here, and this is where I think the tropical fruit fits in quite well in this tropical environment.
And so, when did you first get into preserving fruits, and why?
Well, I'm just getting, 1 second, I'm just getting to the end of the oranges here, so I'm just going to finish off this little bit. So we've got all our inside of our oranges in there, in our muslin bag. We're just going to add into that some flavourings. Now, if you bought the kit online, you'll have cinnamon and rosemary and stuff like that. At home, if you don't want to add anything, you can go with completely natural flavour of the blood orange, or you could add some fennel seeds or some juniper berries or anything that takes your fancy. So I've just added a couple of cinnamon sticks and a large sprig of rosemary. And then we're going to tie up our bag. So take two corners, tie them together in a simple knot. We'll double, just like that, once through. Take the other two corners. Exactly the same in a knot. And then those two knots, bring them together and tie them at the top. So we've got a nice little bundle. I'm going to drop that into our blood orange juice. Now we've got a kilo of sugar, a kilo of blood oranges. Very simply, we can add a litre. I've got a litre of water measured out. We can add a litre of water into that. And this is the point where my mother would leave it to steep overnight. But I'm going to bring it straight up to the boil. So in the pan, everything together, and we'll bring it up to the boil. While that's coming up to the boil, we're going to start chopping our orange skins. So this is the bit where I probably might move a little bit faster than some of you at home, but I hope you manage to keep up. You can either, and it depends on what your preference is. I like quite a chunky cut marmalade, but you can slice them through really nice and thinly, like that, or a little bit thicker, about double the thickness, like that. Or you can have a mixture of the two. It's up to you, whichever you like at home, but very carefully, making sure your fingers are straight down like that, so that if you do slip with a knife, it just bashes against your knuckle, rather than taking the end of your finger off. And we're going to gently chop through all of our skin while our juice and pith is all coming up to the boil and infusing next to us. Back to your question. I was very lucky. I was brought up in London, but my parents had an allotment from a very young age, and there was always jams and fruits and stuff going on all the time. Some of my earliest cooking memories are making hampers for Christmas for my grandparents, and making sweets and jams and marmalades and things like that. And then I suppose, as with any angry teenager, I kind of lost all of that and then I became a professional chef. And in those days, there wasn't much done in the kitchen. But a few years ago, I spent some time living in France and growing a lot of my own produce, and I really got back into preserving and taking the natural landscape and preserving it for the rest of the year. So yeah, I did a lot of pickling, jamming, marmalading, curding all year round.
That's interesting that you've got a bit of an international background to your cooking, and that's inspired you. We've got Sam, who's just sent in a question asking, would cardamom be a complementary spice to use?
Definitely. Really, really lovely flavour to go with orange. We do a lovely orange, almond and cardamom cake. Yeah, it's a real lovely flavour. It would definitely complement these beautiful oranges.
So it's you can go right around the world with a marmalade and adding the tastes to it then.
Yeah, I think being inventive is one of the great things of food. I mean, we're so lucky in this country that we have influences from all over the world. And I think using those flavors, spices, and blending them with different combinations is a real special thing. Food is somewhere where people can play and have fun, and I think that's vitally important.
So also, looking at the tools that you've got there, the essential ones, Sam's also said that he picked up one of those juices in India and that he finds it extremely useful. Do chefs put a lot of weight on the kit that they use?
Yeah, it's right. I mean, the kit it makes everyone's jobs easier, doesn't it? So it's vitally important that you've got the right piece of kit. And an elbow juicer like that is a great piece of kit for racing through your oranges for marmalade, or lemon juice when you need lemon juice for service in the restaurant. So yeah, it's really important. A really sharp knife, a spoon, and a pen, I think, are the vital pieces of equipment for any chef.
Pen. Tell us a little bit more about that. Where does the pen come in?
A pen is vitally important to always, for me anyway, to always take notes on what you're doing, to always be writing down your ideas. I've always got a pen in my pocket, and I'm always writing down things that come to me, or that I've thought of, or changes we need to make, or anything like that. So, or instructions, or anything. So yeah, it's vitally important.
So if you had very shortly a few words of wisdom for any young budding chefs out there, what do you think they would be?
Take notes. No, take notes. And for any young budding chef, I think it's vitally important to find the very best restaurant you can. I was very lucky to work with some amazing cooks at a very young age, and to throw yourself in and to really learn from, it's vital, you learn the best you can on the job, working in restaurants day in, day out with people who've got experience. So the best restaurant you can find around you, and seize that opportunity with both hands. Just while we're talking, so our liquid has now come up to the boil. It's boiling away there. I'm just going to turn this one down a little bit. See, we've got a little yellow foam that's risen to the top. And before we add our sugar, we're just going to take a little bit of that off. So we're going to take our spoon and very gently just scrape around the outside, just lifting up the foam. Just put it in the bin over here. And then once we've done that, we're going to add our jamming sugar. So to go with our kilo of oranges, exactly a kilo of sugar. Straight in, very gently. We're going to stir it as we pour it in. We don't want it to form in a big lump on the bottom, because it could burn. So we've got it all in there, and we're just going to stir it till it dissolves. We'll flip it over. Now, sugar can get very hot, much hotter than water, which is what we actually want. We want to get to an eventual temperature of 105 degrees. So just be very careful as we're now starting to bring this up to the boil. The liquid will get very, very hot and can stick to you and cause a really bad burn. So just be very careful. So we're going to stir that so our sugar's all dissolved.
So Alan, we've got a question from Sue, who's asked, how much pith should be left on the skins?
How much pith should be left on the skin? A little bit. Pith has lots of pectin in it, so it's really helpful. And as we cook it out with the sugar, it won't be bitter. We'll get the lovely sweetness, and we'll get the offset of bitter and sweet, which is what we're looking for in the marmalade. We don't want it to be overly sweet. So I would suggest that, as you can see with mine, I've left a little bit of the white on there. Not too much, but a little bit, just like that. And that's absolutely fine. You don't want just the skin. It'll be too thin and it'll break down. I think that a little bit of that whiteness will just add more pectin, add a little bit more of that bitterness, so we get a balance with our sugar.
And Alan, Lisa's asking, Did you scrub those oranges beforehand? Is that necessary?
Give them a good wash under a tap, which we did beforehand we started here, but nothing more. You don't need to scrub them in anyway. These are completely organic, unwaxed, so no problems with that at all.
Also, Therese has written in to say, why have you skimmed off the foam from that?
Just because it's impurities that are boiling out of the orange juice, and we just want it to be as natural as possible, so we're just lifting it off. So we're working through our orange skin here. This is the most time-consuming bit of the marmalade, chopping it all through. Remember just to remove the little green bits that you find on the top of the orange while you're chopping it through. They'll just pop out nice and easily.
So there's three main types of marmalade when you're talking about shred, aren't there? There's shredless, there's a fine shred, and then there's a really thickly packed shred.
Yeah.
You've already mentioned you prefer a bit of a thicker.
Yeah, I love the texture. I think it's really nice, the texture in a marmalade, to have big chunky bits and then the lovely liquid around it as you spread it onto your toast or crumpet. So yeah, I prefer a much thicker cut. I don't want it too thick. I wouldn't want huge pieces, but definitely I love a little bit of texture in the marmalade.
Well, January is all about oranges here. What have you got planned for the rest of the year? I imagine it's very seasonal, even if things aren't grown here. Yeah,
I mean, we rely completely on the seasons here, whether they're the seasons from the land around us here on the estate or seasons from elsewhere. For instance, next month we know at the moment it's summer in South Africa, and our friends at Babylon Storeroom are growing us a whole load of black pearl plums, which we'll be expecting to receive sometimes towards the end of February, beginning of March. So we'll be doing lots of preserving of plums. We make an amazing plum brown sauce, and we plum and cinnamon chutneys and all of that. So all of that fruit, we don't just rely on the land around us, but our friends in South Africa send us these wonderful seasonal treats at other times as well.
And is there a lot of experimentation that goes on in the kitchens with you and your team when you get these bounties?
It's a constant process of experimentation. I've been a chef for over 20 years, and one of the best things about it is I still learn to this day, and you can only challenge yourself and learn. So I'm very lucky to work with such an experienced, interested team around me that are always challenging themselves to learn new things. So yeah, it's a constant process of learning and development every single day.
And you work very closely with your team, but do you work closely with other teams on the estate as well?
Yeah, it's one of the first things that ever struck me when I started working here was how everybody in every position was so passionate about what they did. And it's vitally important that all of those teams work together to create, one key one is obviously our links with the growing team in the gardens. We spend months planning out the year, what they're going to plant, when they're going to harvest, so that menus and products are based around exactly what we're taking from the estate. We started working recently on big projects together on foraging with the woodland team, of foraging the products are out in the woods here or in the fields. So it's really important that those, for us, we're part of a chain of food, really. We get the end product and we create it into beautiful dishes, but we're only showing off the passion and dedication that the rest of those people are putting into growing that product and caring for it all year round.
Somerset seems to have a very rich food culture to it. Would you say that's accurate?
Definitely. I'm a newbie to Somerset, really. I've only lived here a couple of years, but the richness and variety of product and ingredient is unbelievable. Some absolutely stunning cheeses, obviously cider, and the land around here and what we're managing to grow is just absolutely incredible. So yeah, I feel very privileged to work in such a bountiful place, I suppose.
You mentioned that some people might like to flavour their marmalade with whiskey. Is it conceivable that they could do that with cider as well?
It's definitely, yeah, some people do make a cider marmalade. Without a doubt, cider, you can make a cider marmalade with cider and oranges. Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. So we're just coming to the end of our skin here. I hope you are managing to keep up at home. I've obviously been doing this for quite a long time, so I tend to chop quite quickly. But we are getting there. So once we've got it all sliced through, we're going to get it into our pan with our, as you can see, our liquids come back to the boil. All the sugar's dissolved. It's cooking away there. We've got a little bit more of that foam. We're just going to skim that off.
And Alan, Lynn's asking, would you use the same techniques when using Seville oranges?
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly the same. The only change I'd make is I'd add probably about half again sugar, just because of the bitterness of the Seville oranges. So yeah, I'd use exactly the same technique. I wouldn't change anything, apart from the fact that I'd add some more sugar to the recipe.
So no need to cook the peel before adding the sugar, she asks.
No, I don't believe in that. Lots of people do, but I don't do that at all. I love the natural flavour, and I don't want an overly sweet marmalade. I want a balance of those sugars and bitterness as well. So I don't believe in cooking the skin beforehand.
And you've poured in 1 litre of water into that recipe,
Yeah.
That's correct?
Yeah. I'm just going to drop in the skin now into our pan, all chopped up. We're going to give it a good stir. And that is everything into the marmalade, and now we just need to cook it out. What we're looking to do with cook it out is bring it up to the boil and then cook the temperature right up to 105 degrees. So as the water evaporates, the liquid and the orange will start to break down, and we'll get those sugars moving, and that will start to really raise the temperature. Jamming or setting temperature is at 105 degrees, so that's what we're aiming for. So I'm just going to put this little burner on next to me here. Bring the pan back up to the boil.
Alan, a couple of people are writing in from home who are cooking along, asking about the bottle of juice in the kit. Is this for the curd?
This is for the curd, yes. So
don't drink it.
So don't drink it, although it's not all for the curds. There is a little bit there for you to drink. So yes, that's for the curd, which we're going to start in 1 minute, just once we've got this marmalade on the go. So it's come up to the boil, and then we're just going to sit it to one side and start on our curd. So yes, the bottle of juice. For great timing of the question, I say. We're going to make a blood orange curd. So curds are one of my favourite things. I absolutely love a really rich lemon curd or a blood orange curd. Again, great in the morning, but even for me, the best thing to do with them is as a filling for a cake, a wonderful Victoria sponge with a rich blood orange curd in it. Absolutely amazing. So the bottle of juice in your kit is 330 mils, but for the recipe, we only need 250. So the extra 80 here for a little fresh shot of blood orange juice on this morning to really give you a fresh kick. So we're going to add the juice into our pan. We've also got 250 grams of sugar, just normal sugar, not jamming sugar this time. And we're going to add half of it. You don't have to measure it out exactly, just roughly half of the sugar into the pan.
So it's quite a forgiving recipe, this one. You can be...
Yeah, you can go one way or the other. As long as you've got the right amount of ingredients. We're going to use the sugar later on, but half the sugar in the pan is absolutely fine. Exactly the same with the butter. We're going to put half the butter in now, and then we'll add the other half of the butter later. So the butter is 315 grams. And we're going to add half right now.
So Alan, Sam has also asked about adding Cointreau to the marmalade. Would you add other flavours to a curd?
You could add other flavours to the curd. We're developing right now a ginger curd, a lemon and ginger curd. So yes, you could add other flavours. I wouldn't add, you could balance the liquid, so I'd take a little bit of blood orange juice out, and you could maybe add a little bit of Cointreau or something like that. So half the butter half the sugar and the blood orange juice in the pan, and we're just going to bring that very gently up to a simmer. While we're doing that, I'm just going to turn that down a little bit.
So there's a good bubble coming off that marmalade
There
now.
is definitely a good bubble, and so we're going to get our probe and check the temperature. I've got an electronic probe here, but you could use a traditional jamming thermometer at home. We're just going to put the probe in, and as you can see, it's already up to about 102.5 degrees. What we're looking for is 105. And actually, once it goes over 100, the longest period of time is then for it to get from 100 to 105. Those 5 degrees take a lot longer than getting up to 100. We can bring it up to boiling with water quite easily.
So before the days of electronic probes, they were certainly making jams and preserves. For those at home who don't have an electronic probe, what would your advice be?
To use either a traditional jamming thermometer or to do it a little bit by eye and have a cold plate in your fridge, which I'll show you later the technique when we get towards it setting in a few minutes. And you can have a cold plate and you can test it every so often to see if it's got to setting temperature.
So you've got them, you're still skimming off the marmalade there.
Yeah, I'm just taking these impurities out of the top.
And you're just simmering now, aren't you? You've turned the heat down a bit and it's just simmering.
It's just ticking over, the bubbles are coming up. At this point, it's above 100 degrees, so it's really, really hot. So it's probably quite sticky, so you don't want to get any spilt on you or anything like that. Be very careful at this stage because it is very hot. I'm in fact just going to swap the pans over, so this one can cook on here very gently. And this one on there, okay? So the marmalade is still ticking away. And the curd, we're melting all that butter and sugar and blood orange juice together. While we're doing that, we're going to take our egg yolks. So in here, we've got 250 grams of egg yolk, which is about 12 egg yolks probably. I'm using pasteurized. Now, the reason I use pasteurized egg yolk is because I get a little bit more shelf life out of it. It will last longer. But you can equally use normal eggs at home. If you separate out the eggs, I always make sure that I keep the whites and I freeze them. But I'll freeze them in portions. So if I know that 2 egg whites will make a batch of meringue, I'll freeze them in batches of 2, so that when I defrost them, I know I've got exactly the right amount for a batch of meringue or something like that. So marmalade ticking away, egg yolks and the other half of the sugar into our bowl. And we're going to whisk those together. Make sure as soon as you put the sugar into your egg yolks, you start whisking. Because if you put the sugar in and leave it to set there, it can do what we call burn the egg yolks, and that will create a skin on top of the egg yolks.
So whilst you're whisking away there, Alan, a few questions coming in on back to the marmalade on those quantities. So this is one of the simpler recipes to follow, which just keeps everything at 1,000. 1,000 grams of oranges, 1,000 grams of
sugar and 1,000 millilitres of water, and that's it. They're all exactly the same, super simple. We're using the whole orange, but yeah, it doesn't need anything more than that.
Perfect. So 1, 1, 1. A ratio of 1, 1, 1.
Yeah, exactly that.
Also, back onto that marmalade, Jules has asked, what quantity of whiskey would this recipe take?
Would it take?
Yeah.
Well, I would replace some of the water with some whiskey if I was going to add whiskey to it. So if we took out 200 mils of water, I'd put in 200 mils of whiskey.
Sounds like a generous glug of whiskey.
Wow. There's no point having whiskey if you're not going to be generous, is there, Arthur? So whisk them all together. As you can see here, oh, that's a bit warm. Be careful. Our butter's all melting and our blood orange juice is coming up to the boil. We've whisked our egg yolks together and we're just going to keep whisking until they become nice and ribbony. So the sugar and the egg yolk will thicken up together.
You're using just a hand whisk there, but how about people at home with an electronic whisk?
Electronic whisks are great, they make things go faster, but they're not as good for your biceps and a good workout. So it's becoming, as you can see, it's becoming thicker as I whisk them together. It's becoming ribbony. It's homogenized and completely together. And our liquid has come up to the boil and all of our butter's melted. So what we're going to do is start to add the liquid into the egg yolk. What we don't want to do is add all of the liquid at the same time, because then we're going to burn our egg yolks. It's going to cook and we'll end up with scrambled egg, which we want to avoid. So you want to bring it up very gently, so a little bit at a time. Very slowly adding a stream and making sure we're whisking it in.
So,
all of our liquid's going in there.
So Carla has asked, Alan, how much sugar did you put on those eggs?
So half sugar, so the rest is 250 grams. So we put 125 in the pan and 125 into the eggs. And we're going to whisk all of that together. And then once it all together, it's got that lovely pink colour to it.
It's got a lovely pink colour. It's also got this exquisite smell coming off it.
It's delicious, isn't it? These oranges are absolutely amazing. And we're going to add that very gently back into our pan. Okay.
So in a way, it's a sort of alchemy cooking, isn't it? Do you love the process as much as you love the end result?
Oh yeah, definitely. I've always found cooking very calming. Whenever I get in a bad mood at home, I go away and make bread because I find the process of kneading bread incredibly calming and something that just takes my mind away from everything else. The process of cooking, you don't have to focus on anything else, just on what you're doing in front of you at the time. So we're just checking our temperature again on our marmalade, and as you can see, it's been cooking away for quite a while now, but it's only got up another sort of degree. So it's got up to 100. We'll keep that cooking away, and we're going to cook our curd. So we've put the liquid back into our pan. We take a wooden spoon, put it back on the heat, just a sort of low heat, not too high, and we're going to start to stir it.
So Alan, for a few people at home, they stuck in perhaps a little too much water. What would you say to rescue the marmalade at this point? They put in 2 litres rather than the 1 litre.
2 litre. So at this point, if you put in a little bit too much water, you just need to cook the marmalade out for longer. Your marmalade is just going to take a little bit longer than mine to cook, but as the water evaporates, you'll lose that water. Your peel might break down a little bit more, but you'll still get a perfect product at the end. So adding more water isn't a major issue. We're just going to need to cook it for a little bit longer. So our curd, very gently, I'm just going to clean that bit up that I've spilt. We've got to constantly stir it. So because the heat's coming from the bottom, if we're not constantly stirring, at the bottom we're going to scramble the egg, and we don't want to scramble the egg. We just want to bring the egg up to between 85 and 90 degrees. We don't want to take it any more than that, because then we'll start to get really cooked egg and we'll get a grainy texture to our curd. So we need to be very gently stirring it. As you can see, it's not boiling, but it's starting to thicken up now. Marmalade's bubbling away. as you can see, it's still quite thin. It's just dripping very fast off the spoon. So we know we've still got a little bit more cooking to be doing. So yes, no problem if you put a little bit too much water in it. It will just take a little bit longer to cook out, and that's it.
Would you always use cinnamon bark like that rather than ground cinnamon?
Yes, for me it's a much, especially in marmalade, you want to infuse the flavour, and the powdered cinnamon can be quite overpowering if you put too much in. So yeah, I don't always recommend using a stick of cinnamon like this. Getting this wonderful sort of pink, yellowy pink colour out of this curd, out of the combination of the eggs and the blood orange juice. It's going to look absolutely stunning in the jar when we're finished. As you can see, the foam that we had on top of the curd is now gone as we cook it out, and so we can tell that it's starting to thicken up. As it starts to thicken up, when we get to about this stage, we can see it's still running a little bit. We'll take it a little bit further, and then we're going to start adding the other half of our butter. Oh, spilled another little bit there, excuse me. So now we're getting a lovely thick product on this curd. We're going to start adding the other half of the butter. Just adding it in lumps, continuing to stir.
So Alan, apart from citrus fruits, can you make curds from any other fruit?
I've never made anything from any other fruit. I normally use blood orange or lemon with different flavourings. You need the acidity, really, to help set it. Otherwise, it could become a really sweet, overly creamy product. So I've never done it. I don't know if it's possible. Right, so we're stirring the butter into our curd. Our marmalade is ticking away. Once all the butter's melted into that curd, you can see now we're getting a really nice thick coating on our spoon. So we're almost ready on that one. The marmalade is bubbling away.
The smells coming off that marmalade, just exquisite. Although you certainly wouldn't want to test any at this point. The temperature of the sugar will be a lot higher than even boiling water right now. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely. We're looking for 105 degrees. So you get some, excuse me, if you get some of that on your skin, you really would get a nasty burn. So be very careful. So our curds are pretty much done. We've never boiled this, okay? It's never come up to the boil. It's been sitting at that point just about 85 to 90 degrees, below simmering, below boiling. We don't want to take it that far. We just want to thicken the egg. The egg is a thickening agent here. It's emulsion. It's an emulsion of fats and liquids. The fat obviously coming from the butter and also from the egg yolk, and the liquid from the blood orange juice. And what we're trying to achieve is those two to blend together. And you don't want to boil it because you'll reduce off too much of the liquid and you'll lose that balance. So now we're getting a nice thick product. It's dripping slower. We can see that it's not running as fast on the back of the spoon. And we're going to turn that off in 1 minute and leave it to sit for a couple of minutes. While that's sitting, we'll check in on our marmalade again. So just getting your probe, making sure that you check various areas. We're up to just above 104. So at this point, I'd be looking to get a cold plate from the fridge. I've got one over here that I'll grab in a minute, so that we can be checking our temperature, seeing if we're getting to that setting temperature. So it's just sitting just above 104 degrees. So it's moving up towards jamming temperature. Give it a good stir. Our curds, as you can see, just starting to cool and they're starting to set up. Fantastic news. We want to put them into the jar hot. Now these jars, I have sterilised. Easiest way to sterilise jars, to put them in your dishwasher, and make sure it's on a setting at above 80 degrees. So make sure it's on a setting above 80 degrees, put them through, they'll be absolutely fine. We're going to pour our curd in very carefully. Filling up right up to the top, leaving a little gap where the lid goes on, but apart from that, filling right to the top.
So Emily's asked, could you add passion fruit juice to the curd?
Oh yes, definitely. Passion fruit works really well in a curd. Works really well in a curd and works really well in an ice cream. One of my favourite ice creams is passion fruit. So once we poured it in hot, we're going to put our lids on almost straight away. Making sure they're nice and tight. And then we're going to do something called hot sealing. So we're just going to turn them over and leave them upside down for a few minutes. What this will do, it will push the air out at the bottom. And the air will come out through the lid, and it will help us to get a little shelf life out of it, but we're removing the air from the jar. So just leave them sat upside down. Check our marmalade again.
In terms of sterilising the jars before using them, is the dishwasher set on a high setting in terms of temperature good enough?
Yeah, just above 80 degrees, be absolutely fine. So our marmalade now, or mine, if you put a bit too much water in, or a bit more water than I have, it'll take a little bit longer, but mine's now up to 105 degrees. And I've got a cold plate over here that I've had in the fridge. And this is going to help us to test the marmalade. So we're just going to take a spoon of the liquid and drop it onto our plate.
So for those at home who don't have that electronic probe, this is now how they'll be using it.
Yes, so once we've cooked it out for this length of time, every so often we can just test it on the plate. And what you want to see is, can you see how it's stopping running on the plate? It's not dripping or running off, so it's setting when it's hitting the cold. This means that the pectins and the sugar together, the marmalade is starting to set. So we're getting up to the right temperature. It's not dripping when I tip it, it's not running all over the plate, it's not liquid, the pectins are starting to work. And if you run your spoon or your finger through it, can you see how it doesn't come back together? And you can see it's almost gellifying as I move through it, meaning that we've got to the right temperature for our marmalade. So, we're going to turn that one off.
Is the bag still in the saucepan?
The bag is still in the saucepan at this moment, yes. We've developed all that flavour that's come out of the inside. The bag's still in the saucepan. We're going to lift it out once we've turned it off and let it cool for 1 minute, okay? So we're just going to leave it to cool down a second. Our curds are hot sealing over here. So yeah, once again, when you're testing, you can see how it's setting like a jelly now on my plate. Can you see that? Absolutely perfect.
So for those that have put in the extra water, they'll probably be, they'll need to wait a little longer and just allow it to reduce down a bit.
Exactly that, because it'll take longer to come up to the 105 degrees because there's more water. But apart from that, there'll be no issue with the extra water in there. So we'll get our jars ready. For those of you who've got the kit at home, you've got 8 jars, and this recipe should make almost exactly 4 jars of curd and 4 jars of marmalade. There is a little bit of extra curd here, but we can just put that in a little bowl and have it for breakfast tomorrow.
Sam's asking, do you think pomegranate might make a good curd?
I think pomegranate's got enough acidity in it that it would work in a curd. The problem with pomegranates is getting all that juice out. You have to get specialist juicing machines for pomegranates, or you have to take all the seeds out by hand and then crush them to get the pomegranate juice. So, I mean, you could buy a commercial made pomegranate juice, but that would be one issue I would see with that one. So now we've got to remove our muslin bag with all our pith in it. I'll just take this bowl here. Very gently with my spoon, we're just going to lift it out. Remember,
is that now spent, Alan?
This is now spent, all done with. We've got all of that flavour, we've extracted all of that pectin. We lift it out, we're going to put it into this bowl very gently. Remember at this stage, we're working with a product that's really very hot, so you need to be very careful. And then we're going to fill. So we're going to fill our jars. Again, we want to fill while it's hot because we want to be able to turn them over and use hot fill, turning them upside down to get rid of some of the air in there. It's very hot. There are two ways to do it. One, we could use a jug, pour a jug in, or we could just do it very carefully as I'm going to do. So if you wanted to transfer it to a jug and then pour in with a jug, what you want to make sure is that you're getting a really good mix. You don't want to fill one jar just with the liquid and pour just the liquid in and then have all the pith in another jar, which is why I try to very carefully always take a little of the skin out and put that into the jar first before pouring anything else in. So we're making sure we're getting a good balance of liquid and skin in there. So we're coming towards the end of our live broadcast. And hopefully, if you manage to keep up with all the chopping, and we add a litre of water in, you should be coming towards the end like me. If not, you will be able to finish it exactly the same way as I have done. There'll be no problems. It'll be exactly the same, even if you've put a little bit of extra water in or anything like that. So now I'm going to very gently pour the liquid in.
So, Alan, we've got so many of these blood oranges. Surely we're not going to be turning them all into curds and marmalade.
No, we're not going to turn them all into curds and marmalade. We are doing lots of different things with them. We're making a lot of blood orange juice, which is absolutely delicious at this time of year. A really stunning product. We've been preserving them we do a lot of what we call bottling fruit here. So we'll make a simple sugar syrup, and we'll flavour it with maybe some cinnamon or some fennel seeds. And we'll preserve the slices. So later in the year, we can serve them as desserts with gelato or things like that. So, because we're coming to the end, I'm just going to finish chopping up these two jars so you can see exactly what I mean again with the hot filling. We're going to make sure the jars are nice and warm. Our lid's straight on. And again, we're just going to turn them over and then leave them upside down for about 10 minutes to extract that air. That's it. That's our curds and marmalades workshop. Continue to fill with the rest of the marmalade, and hopefully you'll have a wonderful preserve to use for the next 6 months of the year.